Well, much like I did for Ocarina of Time 3D, I'm going to give you a thoughts video on StarFox64 3D. Now, I haven't gotten that far into the game. I've beaten it, and I've gotten every medal on the normal mode, barely touched the expert mode, haven't even tried the Gyroscope mode. I've done the training with it, I don't care for it at all. And I've done Score Tech and Battle mode, and I'll get into everything on that later. First, I'll talk about the updates and the new stuff they put in there. The 3D effects, for the most part, which is what everybody's going to be talking about, well, this is kind of mixed. Some people are saying it's great, some people are saying it's not that great. When I first saw the opening sequence and the R-Wing was charging up its engine to take off, I was just saying to myself, oh my god, that wing is going to poke me in the eye! I couldn't believe how great the 3D effects are on this thing. It really does look like it'll either come at you or everything's in its right spots. You can clearly tell where everything is in the environment. You can tell how far away things are, how close to you they are, and you'll know if you're going to run into something or not. So, in my personal opinion, the 3D effects work great. Probably better than Ocarina of Time because it benefits more from the environment. The visuals themselves, much like Ocarina of Time, have gotten a major revamp and boost. And I also believe StarFox64 benefited more from it than Ocarina of Time, as a lot of levels take a lot of the environment and atmosphere effects to it. Zonus is probably one of the better examples of it. In the 64 version, it was green water, green sky. Here it's dark green, the waves are really moving around, and there's rain coming at you, and there's some dark green clouds. And unlike the trailers and screenshots, you can tell where everything is. That's something else I should really bring up right now. The trailers and screenshots do not do this game justice. They make it look blurry, they make it look too bright, they make it look out of focus. Don't believe them. It really looks fantastic on the 3DS screen. But like I was saying, a lot of the environment has definitely changed, and for the better. Like Macbeth, and you can see these little tiny rocks. There's more texture to it. It looks far more polished, and it really draws you in. Though I really didn't like the warp zones. I thought I couldn't see a thing in there. That's where everything looked out of place. That's where I couldn't tell where one thing was, even with the 3D effects on. It just looked too bright, too colorful, and I couldn't see a lot of things that I normally could see. So that was the only part with the visuals I had a problem with. Everything else is perfectly fine. The voice acting and the music also have been remade. I'm going to go over the voice acting later. The audio, for the most part, I'm kind of mixed on. A lot of it sounds, well, I'm just going to have to get used to it, I guess. A lot of it I prefer on the 64, though Area 6 sounds absolutely fantastic, especially with the vocals. And much like 64 version, you can unlock the sound test mode and just listen to it there. And it's probably better if you listen to it without all the sound effects, because then you can just really hear it, instead of just trying to get an understanding of it with all the sound effects in the way. As I briefly mentioned, there is a Score Tech mode, and if you remember what I said at the end of my StarFox64 redo review, I'd wanted to be able to go to any planet I wanted to without having to play throughout the game just to get there. Here, I can just select any level, any planet, any place, and I can just go there instantly. Unfortunately, you will always start off with 3 smart bombs and just the single laser. You'll have to keep increasing it, so there's a problem there. However, they have made it a bit more challenging, because instead of getting the requirements for a medal on the normal mode, here some of them are a bit higher. Fichina has 190 to get a gold medal, and 150, which is the normal medal requirement, is now just silver. Corneria is pretty much the same thing, 190. The asteroid field, you had to get 200, which again is just silver, but here it's 300. Now myself, I've been able to get past 350, so it's not a problem. But you get what I mean. It gives you more of an incentive to play through these levels and get a better score, and you can just keep experimenting to see what works, what doesn't. So for that little new mode, it works very well for someone like me, who wants to get to these levels right away. Although I will say some of the levels feel a bit more challenging than they used to. Sector Z was always one of the most hardest levels to get a medal on. I got it on my first try. Aqua's, on the other hand, very difficult to get a medal on. However, I've noticed something. If you just keep pressing the torpedo button, you'll also fire out your lasers, which to me works very well. So when you get to Aqua's, just keep hitting the torpedo button, and you'll just fire as well. Before, that wasn't a problem for me on the 64 version, where I could just the fire and the torpedo button were right next to each other. On my setting for the 3DS, I have the brake button in between them, and it's kind of hard to spam both of those without accidentally hitting the brake button. So, you know, just keep that in mind. You can hit the torpedo button, and you'll also be able to fire the lasers right after doing it. I noticed a couple of you had said that you would wish that the game would save during the 64 version. You could just get to a planet, save, come back to it. Because let's face it, handheld games, they kind of need to be quick pick up and plays and then put down right away. So the save progress was a necessary feature, and it's there. The battle mode also returns, and although the biggest problem with the game, much like everybody else is, and I completely agree with, and I'll get to it later, you can actually battle against the computer. So that's a nice little substitute, and it helps out a lot because no one around me has a 3DS, so there's no one I can play against. So I at least get to experience the multiplayer mode by fighting against the computer. Oh yeah, in the battle mode, doing the barrel roll will also take up part of the little meter for your boost and brake. So if the boost meter is all the way full and you have to wait for it to recharge, you're not going to be able to barrel roll. So I kind of like that. It's more balanced, and you can't just keep barrel rolling to save your butt the whole time. You really have to think about how you're going to get out of the situation. So because of that, the fights become a bit quicker, a bit more intense, and overall a bit more fun. The frame rate on the game is also much better. It's the 64 version on the Virtual Console before the update. If you saw my redo review, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, the frame rate is great. It's fluid unless there's a lot of explosions going off, or there's a couple of explosions right in front of you. But I've kind of noticed that with a lot of other games, so it's a pass. It's not a big problem. It's not a big deal. It's just something that you should get used to already. The game pretty much plays more or less the same. Everything is there. The dialogue is there, though a few lines have been slightly tweaked and changed. A few new lines have actually been recorded, and I like that. I'll get into that a little bit later. And you know, the hidden enemies on Corneria, shooting a charged shot into the asteroid field, they're still there, they're still present. So I like that. Though I have noticed the butterfly enemies in the asteroid field, shooting one of them down real quickly, another one doesn't come up right away. I'm not sure why, but oh well. After you've beaten the game, and after you've done score attack or anything else like that matter, you'll see a little bar come up from Peppy that gives certain advice. And the advice is kind of like the advice I gave during the review with the indirect charge shot. If you fire that off and it hits something, you get more points. It's nice that they give that to new players, or anybody else who hadn't already known that. Oh, and one tiny little thing. They made this small correction. If you had seen my top 10 StarFox planets, which I'm hoping to get posted up on YouTube very soon, you'll notice that they changed Fortuna to Fichina, the way it was originally supposed to be. So they finally fixed that little mistake. So it's no longer Fortuna, it's Fichina. That's about all I can think of for the updates. For the most part, they pretty much took a great game and made it better, but I do have some issues with it as well. Because there's no online mode, it really hurts the lifespan of the game. If this had online mode, this would have been the #1 game to buy for the 3DS. Because, let's face it, online mode and offline mode are great, but online mode guarantees you'll find at least one person to play against. Now, they've done online mode for StarFox before. Although Command was just horrible, it at least had it. And it just surprised me that 3DS is more powerful. Why didn't they put it in there? The single player mode is fine, and the score attack mode is great. It's a nice little addition, but let's face it, online mode makes games last a lot longer. and that would have given it such a strong replay value. Now the battle mode is okay. I haven't been able to play with anybody else because there's no one else around me that has a 3DS yet. So my only option to play against another person is to play it online, and there is no online mode, so I can only play against computer until other people start to get one. Yeah, thanks for messing that up, Nintendo. As far as the new voice actors go, and the voice acting itself, to me everything just seems slowed down. Like they take pauses in between their words, or they just talk slower. And I know it doesn't sound that bad, but I've been playing this game since it came out, and if it's one thing I know, it's like how to imitate their voices perfectly and their speech pattern. And here, it kind of got on my nerve to hear everybody talking that way. Now, I thought it was cool that they actually did get some of the original voice actors back for that. I'm very grateful that they went to that trouble. Although I could only tell one of them returned right away, and that was Mike West. And I saw his name in the credit, and I always saw that in the original 64 version, but he was the only name I could recognize just like that. And he did the voice of Fox. And I'm pretty sure he also did General Pepper and the boss of Sector Y in Macbeth. And you could tell that they sounded alike. They didn't say the lines exactly the same, but it's not so bad. Though Pepe and Falco, to me, were just the worst of the bunch. I'll definitely take the 64 version of them any day of the week. In fact, everybody just seemed kind of a bit emotionless at times. It's pretty weird. And it did, Falco usually sounded bitter, or he would go, "All right!" And he'd show a bit of emotion into it. But this guy in fact, everybody just kind of sounded like they were just reading the line as it is. There was just no emotion into it. There was no... it's kind of sad, but it's something I'm going to get used to. It's either something you get used to, or, like me, I almost never play my portable games with the audio on because there's always someone around. So the only time I get to hear it is when I'm at home, so it's not going to be that much of an issue for me. Going back to gyroscope controls, just, skip it unless you want to give it a shot, but I personally believe that you should never force yourself to get used to bad controls, especially when better controls are optional. And since the circle pad works just fine, there's no reason to use the gyroscope unless you want to just give it yourself a challenge. And unless there's a great reward for completing it, I'm just going to skip it altogether. I've also noticed that your allies take a bit more damage than normal. In fact, sometimes in the 64 version, even when I shot them, they didn't take damage unless I shot them again. Here, not only do they take damage every time, but they seem to take a bit more damage, and it's just... they're going to die a bit easier. Myself, I haven't let any of them go down. Not a single one of them has gone into repair. And whenever they have, because of some little mistake, I would just restart. My goal is to never let any of my teammates or my decoys crash. Yeah, but overall, my issues with StarFox64 3D is pretty much the same as The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D. It's a great remake. If you love the original, you should love this one as well. But if you're looking for something new, you probably won't get it here. Still, it's one of the best games on the 3DS right now, so you shouldn't deprive yourself of it, especially if you love the original. Unless you're trying to save up for the upcoming games, in which case I understand. I certainly don't think it's fair that Shigeru Miyamoto has said that the sales of StarFox64 3D will determine the fate of the series. You're trying to judge the sales of a game to a system where you had to drop the price in about 5 months. Yeah, I don't think that's fair at all. Especially when you don't include online! I think a lot of people who've bought a 3DS are going to buy this right away. Not everyone, obviously, but I can definitely tell a lot of people are going to. I didn't give a recommendation score for Ocarina of Time 3D, and I'm not going to do one for StarFox64 3D. I'm just going to say, if you love the original, go ahead and pick this one up. There's some new stuff in it, but there's not enough strong new content to keep you coming back for more, and that's the hurting replay value. then again, I've been playing StarFox64 for, what is it now, 13 years? No, it's 14 years. So, yeah, if that could last me 14 years, then this should last me a couple months. You know, at least until the brand new games come out. But until then, I've got this, and, well, kind of ironic. StarFox64 was my third game that I got on the 64, and StarFox64 3D is the third game I got for my 3DS.